Good evening and welcome to Level Up Summer Reading for students in grades 5 through 7. I'm your host, Bronwyn McCarthy, Program Coordinator of Library Media for Pinellas County Schools. If you didn't know, summer is right around the corner and it's a great time to catch up on your reading or check out new books. Tonight, I'm going to show you where to go to find the latest books and give you a sneak peek at one of the new Sunshine State Young Readers Award books for grades 6 to 8. All this talk about reading, so where do you go to get these great books? That's easy. The first place you can always go is to your school library. Many schools offer summer book checkouts before the end of the school year or are doing their own summer reading challenges. Listen for any school announcements about summer book checkout opportunities and reading programs, or ask your library media specialist. Another location in our communities to access books this summer is through the Pinellas Public Library Cooperative. Did you know that you can get a 3 for Me library card just for kids so you can check out books? Ask your parent or guardian to take you to your local public library to get your library card today. Speaking of the public library, the ever-popular Reading with the Rays program is back this summer. Game cards will be available on May 30th. Get ready to start tracking your reading to earn awesome prizes. Many of our community public libraries are hosting their own summer reading programs and activities, so if you haven't visited your public library in a while, this is a great time to do so. Parents and guardians who are tuning in, links to more information about our public libraries, 3 for Me, and Reading with the Rays are posted below in the comments section. Contact your local public library for more information about the cool things happening this summer right in your community. Let's take a quick break with a reading joke. What's got pages and words and you can read it, but you can't touch it? I'll give you a second. It's an ebook. So what about ebooks and audiobooks? If you haven't heard, pretty much everything you need for school that is online can be found in Clever. That includes a few of the places where you will need to go to access ebooks this summer. At this time, I want to introduce you to a new ebook and audiobook friend that you might not know yet, Sora. To get to Sora, you simply log into Clever, go to the Resources section, and click on Sora by Overdrive. You can also download the free Sora app for Android and Apple devices. What I love most about Sora is that you can download ebooks and audiobooks directly to your laptop, tablet, or phone when you're on Wi-Fi, and then you don't need to use data or have access to Wi-Fi to enjoy. This means you can take your ebooks and audiobooks wherever you go this summer. Not only will you find the most recent Sunshine State books, there are lots of other popular ebooks and audiobooks to choose from. Looking for some awesome ebooks to read this summer but you aren't sure what to read? Sora is promoting their summer reading program, Sweet Reads, which you can find easily as soon as you log in. These books are available all summer and have unlimited copies. Back to the Sunshine State books. Did you know that with Sora you can start reading those books now? If you're thinking about joining your school's Battle of the Books team, this is a great way to know the battle books and get a head start on reading them this summer. In fact, I'm going to give you a sneak preview of one of this year's Sunshine State books for grades 6 to 8, available now in Sora. And now, a peek at Cleo Porter and the Body Electric by Jake Burt. Chapter 1. 3 objects sat upon the carpet in Cleo Porter's living room: an apple core, a human skull, and a package wrapped in red. It was the last of these that had Cleo well and thoroughly vexed. She lay on her stomach, bare feet waving in the air behind her and chin digging into the back of her hand. Her belly was starting to get itchy from the carpet fibers poking through her shirt, but she just wriggled a bit to scratch it. She'd stare at the glossy box for another hour if she had to, until it either disappeared or made sense. First, there was its color: deep red, blood red. Hemoglobin red, as Cleo would say. Of course, she knew what it meant. The package contained medicine. But she wasn't sick. Her mom wasn't sick. Her dad wasn't sick. And Miss Vane, well, she couldn't get sick, so there was no reason Cleo could see for them to have the medicine. Then there was the label. Miriam Wendemore Adisa, 412263, 25th May, 2096. The address was right. Cleo had even sung the silly little song her dad had taught her to remember it. The number starts with 412, a place to live for me and you, rounded off with 263, safe from influenza D. The date was obviously right. the name? That was all wrong. Cleo pulled up to her knees, dug her nails into her belly for a few satisfying seconds, and then reached for her scroll. When she had it unfurled, it clicked into a stiff board and she propped it against the package. A simple touch in the middle brought the screen to life, and an array of pillowy blue letters appeared. Virtual Adaptive Instructional Network, use voice recognition to log on. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes, Cleo said quickly. The pudgy letters dissolved instantly, replaced by the fretful face of her teacher who peered at Cleo over her bifocals. You've been gone for a good deal more than a few minutes, Cleo, Miss Vane observed. Cleo glanced at the icon behind Miss Vane's right shoulder. The screen zoomed in, replacing the matronly teacher's face with that of a clock. It's only been 17, Cleo retorted, rolling her eyes. I can take a little break. The test isn't until next week. Miss Vane seized the opportunity to reclaim the screen. 17 minutes is more than enough time to eat an apple. Besides, your test is in 5 days, darling. 5. And I've been studying for it since I was 6. That's half my life. Miss Vane wagged a virtual finger at her. Some have been at it longer than that. Now where's your skull? We were reviewing the names of sutures. Cleo grabbed the skull and held it in front of her scroll. Metopic, coronal, sagittal, lambdoid. There, now can I ask you a question? Always and anything, love. Who is Miriam Wendemore Adisa? Cleo repeated the last name letter by letter just to be sure. Miss Vane blinked, something she did only when consulting the database. Then she shook her head. Sorry, Cleo, I don't have information on anyone by that name. I could expand my search to fictional characters and variant spellings if you like. Cleo frowned. No, thank you. It's not a historical figure or anyone like that, anyway. Someone contemporary? Ah, sorry there, love. Vanes don't have access to the directory. Why do you ask? Cleo picked up the scroll and turned it around, letting Miss Vane see the package. That's where I got the name. Miss Vane wore a reassuring smile as Cleo flipped her back. It's probably for one of your mother's patients, yes? Cleo squinted skeptically at the package. I don't know. I mean, it's not like my mom can just give her the medicine. It's no good here. Best ask her when she's done with work then. In the meantime, may I suggest a thorough review of the optic nerve? A slowly rotating image of an eyeball replaced Miss Vane's patient face. Cleo's eyes weren't on it, though. Instead, she was staring at the door that led into her mother's office. The seal around the edge pulsed a quiet orange. Her mom was in surgery. So that was a dead end then. Maybe our tube malfunctioned, Cleo said suddenly, and she scrambled to her feet. Miss Vane's voice followed her. Tubes don't malfunction, dearie. They're just tubes, and packages don't get delivered to the wrong place. Cleo ignored her. The tube jutted into their kitchen like a giant made of glass had shoved its finger through their wall. Cleo and her father had used paints to decorate it like a garden box, and every time a delivery whooshed in, it looked like the flowers and butterflies and bees were alive with light, if only for a second. When she was younger, she'd press her face to the rounded end, watching for deliveries and screaming ecstatically every time the shutter in the wall opened. That was her dad's cue to slide open the top of the tube and grab the delivery, whether it was food or soap or a replacement scroll. Cleo peered through the glass the same way now, but Miss Vane was right. It was just a tube, their tube. It wasn't broken, and it certainly wasn't capable of magically manufacturing medicine. Still, something weird had happened, and it involved that tube. Cleo knew it. Mostly because other than the tiny air vents in the compost chute, it was the only way anything got into or out of their apartment. Ever. Chapter 2. One day, right after Cleo had turned 3, her mother discovered her in her room performing surgery on Ellie the elephant. She had her wild cloud of brown curls tied back as best her little fingers could manage, and she wore a pair of her own underwear over her face like a surgical mask, her serious gray eyes peering through the leg holes. Once they had cleaned up the stuffing and sewn Ellie back good as new, Knowles Porter asked her daughter just what exactly she thought she was doing. In a tiny, wise voice, with every word perfectly pronounced, Cleo replied, "Emergency appendectomy, Dr. Porter. Nothing else for it." Cleo's mom decided then and there that her daughter would follow in her footsteps as a drone surgeon, even though it meant Cleo would have to start on the medical instruction track by age 6, and even though it meant her daughter would face what, by all accounts, was the most rigorous, high-stakes, cold sweat and nightmare-inducing gateway test of any profession, anywhere. To her infinite credit, Cleo dove right in. Her new favorite toy became a life-size model of the human skeleton. She could name all the bones of the inner ear by age 4, and she could be regularly found tearing through the apartment like a little bug-eyed Frankenstein, her mother's huge drone goggles covering half her head as she scurried to find the cure for whatever fatal illness her father was feigning at the time. On her 6th birthday, Cleo had received her prized possession, her scroll. Miss Vane was greatly appreciated by child and parents alike. She answered all of Cleo's questions, which allowed Bowman and Knowles Porter to take a much-needed break from doing the same. And one of the first questions she asked, "Where is everyone else?" "Everyone else, love?" Miss Vane had replied. "Not like Mommy and Daddy, I know where they are, but the people on the screens, the people in my games, the other kids you're helping, people like that." Miss Vane blinked several times, then she cheerfully asked, "Would you like that information in a timeline, an encyclopedia entry, a documentary film, or a story?" "Story, please. Always story." "As you like. Comfy, love?" The little girl held up a finger, then ran to get her silky blanket and the skull from her model. She set her scroll up stiff, positioned the skull so it too could see, and popped her thumb in her mouth. "Mind the sucking, Cleo," Miss Vane chirped gently. "Remember what we—" "Oh yes, malocclusion of the central and lateral incisors. Right, I'm still working on it." "I know, love." Cleo wiped her thumb on the blanket and drew in her cheeks to make fish lips instead. Miss Vane began. "Everyone lives in apartments just like you do, Cleo. It keeps them safe." "From what?" "These days, not a great deal, at least nothing that has been recorded in the database, but it wasn't always that way." "Influenza D?" "Just so, and that's where this story begins. The year was 2027, and doctors—" "Like Mommy?" Miss Vane nodded, folding her hands atop her desk. "Sort of like your mother, yes. They discovered that many people all around the world were getting very sick all at about the same time." "Did they die?" Miss Vane slipped her bifocals up to sit along the peak of her peppery white hair. It made her look even kinder than usual. "Yes, Cleo, many did die, and if this is too upsetting, we can play a game instead. I know a delightful dance that helps with the names of the joints." Cleo's wispy eyebrows nodded and she shook her head. "No, more story, please." Miss Vane waited until Cleo had gathered up the silky blanket and wrapped herself in it. Then she continued. "Most of the world got sick, and the doctors couldn't help them. Just as bad, they couldn't figure out what was wrong. Everyone seemed to be ill with different things, just at the same time. And because the doctors, scientists, and politicians couldn't agree on what was causing the malady, they didn't find a cure." "Not ever?" "Not ever, no. In fact, it wasn't until 10 years later that they even discovered what it was, a strain of the flu that had changed constantly. It started in livestock like pigs and cows, then it spread to humans. The D used to simply denote the strain of the flu, but it came to stand for the Greek letter delta, which means change. Every time it got passed from one person to another, it altered slightly. We call this mutation. So there was no medicine." Miss Vane shook her head. "None, and by that time, so many had passed." "Does past mean died?" "Yes, love, they're synonyms. So many had died that everyone who was left decided a drastic solution was necessary. They built great structures to protect the remaining healthy people. Those people would be kept separate from each other. Each family closed in their own apartment just in case. And because they were separate, influenza D couldn't spread. It was a desperate gamble, but it worked. The last recorded case of the flu was in 2043, and no outbreak has ever occurred within one of the buildings." "What about outside?" Miss Vane blinked. "I have no data on that, but the very good news is that people inside like you and your mommy and daddy are healthy. In fact, the Great Separation, as it came to be known, is credited with the complete elimination of 73 other infectious diseases too. Given the effects of influenza D, I dare say it was a trade-off that people were willing to make." "And people could just meet through screens like us, Miss Vane." Miss Vane smiled. Well, I'm not a person, but yes, and for everything you need in your apartment, there are drones, Cleo finished. Daddy and I are going to paint the delivery tube like a garden. That will be lovely, dear. Would you like to see some pictures of a garden? Of course, 6 years later, Cleo didn't have time for pictures of gardens, and she most definitely didn't have time for a strange package as Miss Vane continued to remind her every time she glanced at it instead of the double bypass surgery she was supposed to be watching. Cleo, you know I can tell when your eyes are not focused on me, Miss Vane said. I've watched this video 100 times. 9, actually. Maybe it's just the outside that's wrong. Of the man's heart? I don't think so. Note the atrial, not the heart, the package. Really, Cleo? I must insist. I know how important the test is to you. It is, Miss Vane. You're right. And that's exactly why I've got to figure out this box thing so that I can study without any distractions. Right now, it's tearing my brain in two. Miss Vane sighed. The curse of the insatiably curious, I suppose. Cleo grabbed the box and positioned it between herself and her scroll. Together, she and her teacher looked it over. It's a nearly perfect cube, Miss Vane observed. It looks perfect to me. Miss Vane minimized herself to a corner of the screen, tossing a transparent drawing of a cube up instead. There really isn't any such thing, at least beyond the theoretical. Even rulers aren't exactly a foot long. If you examine one down to the molecular level, Cleo swiped at the air in front of Miss Vane to dismiss the drawing. Now you're just trying to educate me again. That's my job, love, Miss Vane replied, even if I have to be sneaky about it. She spun once in her chair, and the elderly woman suddenly appeared to be wearing a ninja's costume. Cleo giggled. My friend Tessa would love that. She always was wanting to play Path of the Shadow in the simulator. Too bad I can't use my ninja powers to see inside that box. We could open it, Cleo said, and she ran her fingers along the smooth red paper. It doesn't belong to you, though. Cleo nodded. I thought of that. But honestly, what's more likely, that a package actually got delivered to the wrong place? That doesn't happen. Right, exactly. Or that the name and wrapping are just wrong. It's probably another patch of grass from my dad's office. Miss Vane shrugged, which was her way of saying there were no answers to be found in the database. I could tell you a story about a package delivered to the wrong place if that'd help. I have access to over 4,000 of them. No, thank you. I'm just going to... Before her courage could give out, Cleo slid a finger under the wrapping and lifted up, making a neat tear right along the seam. Surgical, love, Miss Vane said. She had dropped the ninja costume in favor of her usual lavender blouse and sweater. Thanks, Cleo replied without looking up. She folded the paper down along the sides of the box carefully, figuring she could just tape it back together if she needed to. When enough of the package was revealed, Cleo set it down slowly. Oh no. What is it, dear? Cleo picked up her scroll and held it above the package. A tiny light flickered from the corner of the screen, illuminating the clear plastic of the container. Inside, suspended carefully in stabilizing foam, were 3 liquid-filled spheres, their contents as blue as her father's eyes. Cleo recognized them instantly. They were medicine, the kind someone would put right into their injectors so that it would spread as quickly as possible through their body. Tilting Miss Vane to the side, Cleo leaned in to read the tiny print on each sphere. When she pulled back, she repeated softly, "Oh no, no, no." Miss Vane blinked. Calotexina fluorinase, an anti-inflammatory compound used to treat acute and fatal swelling of the brain, Cleo concluded. Somebody does need this. Miss Vane added, and look at the expiration. Cleo scanned the leftmost sphere. A little date had been laser etched there. 28 May 2096. It goes bad in 3 days, Miss Vane murmured. Cleo nodded. Somebody needs this now. I hope you're excited about all the summer reading options and activities you can participate in this summer. Best of all, everything that was mentioned tonight you either have free access to or it's a perk of being a student in Pinellas County Schools. How cool is that? Now that you know about Sora, 3 for Me, and reading with the Rays, go forth and read like you've never read before and have a great summer.